Welcome everyone. It's 1 o'clock, so I think we should get started. My name is Ann Fannin, and on behalf of the CAFCE board, I'd like to welcome you to the first of a series of webinars on the federal government's new Student Work Integrated Learning Program. We're so pleased to have you join us today to give you some additional information on the program and to answer your questions. Today we are joined by Sarah Plouffe, who's the manager of Student Work Integrated Learning, the Student Work Integrated Learning Program, and Benoit Tessier, Executive Director of Employer Liaison Services, both of the Skills and Employment Branch of Employment and Social Development Canada. Sarah and Benoit will provide us with a high-level overview of SWILP, and after their presentation, they'll answer any questions that you might have. Sarah and Benoit would like you to know that they're happy to receive questions in English or French, and that they're also available to present a version of this webinar in French. If you're interested in such a presentation, please email cafce@cafce.ca and let us know, and we'll make arrangements for that presentation. A couple of administrative notes before we begin. In order to ensure the best audio quality for all of our attendees, we have muted the phone lines. So if you have a question during the webinar, you can ask it by using the chat feature in the bottom right of your screen. No, it should say bottom left of your screen. I'll collect the questions and direct them to Sarah and Benoit after the presentation component is finished. And we are recording the webinar today and making it available on the CAFCE website for anyone who is unable to join us or who would like to refer to its content at a later date. Last but not least, if new questions about the program arise or we're unable to answer all of your questions today, please do submit them to cafce@cafce.ca, and then we'll forward them along to Sarah and Benoit. So with that said, I will pass things off to Sarah and Benoit.
Sarah, I don't know if anyone can hear you. You might have to unmute your phone by hitting *7.
Hello?
Now I can hear you.
Excellent. So sorry about that. New to this software for the webinar. So I was just saying that we prepared a few more slides than we thought we would for this presentation. So I'm just going to jump right in and get into things. If there are questions, as Ann pointed out, during the presentation or the webinar, please send them in and we will try to address them, if not today during the webinar, maybe in the coming days or so. So we are here very pleased to be able to speak and present one of our programs today, the Student Work Integrated Learning Program, which was officially kind of launched or activated in the spring, but more recently publicly announced by ministers, our minister, other ministers, and the Prime Minister. So I don't know if any of you saw some echoes of the announcements that happened during the August 28th to September 5th week. It was a busy week for us, so we're just kind of continuing on this trend. And that's it. So I'll go right into the content. The program actually is using employer consortia to deliver work-integrated learning opportunities for students in high-demand fields such as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as business. And I know there are a few questions about the business factor or aspect of things, and I can touch a little bit on that later on in the presentation. So essentially this program really was designed because we kept hearing through our consultations with employers that some of the students or the new grads didn't quite have all the skill sets that they would have liked to see or didn't have as much work experience as maybe in previous decades for students. And so we also were very concerned by the fact that so many of our PSC, our youth in Canada, choose to go through the PSC route. And once they graduated, they really, and we really wanted them to access as quickly as possible a quality job in their field of study. So to create this program, we kind of went through a pretty extensive consultation process, both on the side of employers and PSC institutions and their organizations, regroupements, so as well as student associations and other sectoral groups. And we really focused on two aspects or two streams of activity that we thought were really crucial and kind of went hand in hand to deliver on these outcomes. So first stream of activity is to generate or create new co-op placements and other work-integrated learning opportunities for students. So it's a numbers game. We just want more students to have access to the experience, the workplace experience as they're going through their studies, both to gain new skills and get new contacts or get contacts with employers that could potentially hire them later, as well as just get a clearer sense for what their career path might be. We, through our consultations, really understood that should not or was more difficult to make happen if it wasn't sort of supported by a really strong partnership between industry and willing PSC institutions. As you probably all know way more fluently than I do, the partnership between employers and PSC institutions is a very crucial part of offering students quality placements, quality work placements, experience throughout their studies. And I know that you all probably provide a lot of effort towards making those placements happen. And we felt as though both on the part of the student and the employer and the PSC institutions, if those partnerships were stronger, it could benefit everyone and I think facilitate things for everyone. So the program aims to create 10,000 new quality placements over the next 4 years, both for standard placements and for under-rep groups. So our under-rep groups are female or women in STEM, and I think there was a question from someone else on that topic. For the women aspect of the under-rep group, it is women in STEM and not so much women in business. We just didn't have the stats to validate or to justify that portion. But for now, as the program stands for now, the underrepresented wage subsidy value would apply to women in STEM, as well as disabled students, Aboriginal students, first-year students, and I'm missing one, newcomers. For newcomers, we use the definition that StatsCan uses when they describe newcomers to Canada or new immigrants, which is 5 years in the country or less, or maybe 5 years as an immigrant with an immigrant status or refugee status. I'm not exactly, there might be a little bit of a gray zone there, but we could work around that. What else do I need to say here? I think that's it for this slide. So I think that one of our objectives, and something we kind of learned through a bit of a pilot project before the design of the program was finalized, was that through more work-integrated learning opportunities for students, we really felt as though we could create this sort of virtuous cycle of innovation, and I'm sure that you've all seen this and felt it and really had clear examples of this in your daily work. And we just heard so many stories about how students would go into a workplace, an environment with an employer, and learn about either new technologies or using new tools and new ways of doing things, or just encounter new problems that were just coming up. And we know with technology these days things advance and change so quickly that these students had these conversations with their peers, with their teachers coming back into their classrooms, and it seemed to create this innovation cycle because their peers and their teachers were interested in these new workplace sort of ideas or environments and conditions, and the whole, wouldn't say curriculum, but the whole kind of discussion in the classroom tended to be influenced by the students visiting various workplaces. And so I think we felt very inspired by that and wanted to, for sure, allow for that to continue and to flourish even more. We also often get the question, well, what is really considered as work-integrated learning? And in going through our program design phase, we really kind of depended or tagged along on the HECO definition. Essentially, we wanted to keep the WIL definition as broad as possible. We didn't want to dictate exactly what should be considered WIL and what PSE institutions should consider as WIL and what employers should need or should conform to. Our aim here was really to find, and we heard this through a consultation, that it's not a one-size-fits-all sort of scenario. Different programs, different needs, different skills need different types of work experience or learning experiences. So really our aim, of course, lots of co-op programs, but our aim is to be inclusive and let employers and PS institutions come together and discuss what kind of work-integrated learning works for them, be it the schedule, be it the content, be it the way that things are done. We are open to considering many, many different options. So for the delivery approach, we thought that it was a good idea, or that it was efficient for all taxpayers, for us to kind of target sectors as a whole, sectors more specifically that had either demonstrated the need for more like demonstrated labor shortages, or just facing future skill shortages, or presented gaps between the skills of the labor force and what they needed in terms of their employees and workers. So we went with 4. In May, we actually signed off on 5 partner agreements, and they're listed here. So in the ICT sector, we have ICTC and ITAC, and I'm going to go a little bit into more detail about their projects. The Canadian Council for Aviation and Aerospace also is one of our delivery partners, as is the Environmental Careers Organization of Canada, also known as EcoCanada, and BioTalent. So each of these delivery organizations has an agreement with our program, our department, to work with employers and PSE institutions to create partnerships and make sure that they recruit more employers to ease your side of things a little bit, I hope, in creating and letting students access more work-integrated learning placements and opportunities. So they have a target for about 1,000 placements over the 4 years of their agreement or the program, and they've shared with us an initial list of partnerships, which include large companies like IBM and other groups. But this is just kind of an initial list of employers. We expect all of our partners to be growing and expanding and sharing the message, supporting the smaller and medium-sized companies to really take part in offering WIL for students. We also learned through our consultations that was a big gap in the system. We can all recognize that larger companies have more resources to potentially, go through all the hoops that need to be crossed off to get access to new students, but maybe the SMEs need a little bit more hand-holding. So we are really depending or expecting or demanding from our delivery partners on the ground in sectors that they connect with SMEs and really help them connect with PSE institutions to get the information about the students and try to recognize all of the value that can provide to their company in the long term. So initial partnerships included a list of employers for all of the projects, as well as a list of PSE institutions. Here again, this is a list of initial partners, their usual go-tos, or the PSE institutions where there are most of the programs related to this sector or this specific subsector focus for the SWILP projects per se. But we are not only expecting, like we really built into their agreements that associations will need to expand on their list of PSE partners. So we are looking to have systemic influence through this. Although it's small amounts of money, we don't expect we can do everything with our $73 million over 4 years, but we really want to just capitalize on the fact that we want these sector organizations to be making all the right connections and validating the benefits for all involved, employers and students. And so we expect, we are demanding that our associations work with the broadest spectrum of PSE institutions as possible. We want them to, reach out into the regions, reach out to smaller PSE institutions, not just Waterloo. No negative intention to Anne and your crew, but we just want everyone to be able to participate in this program as much as possible. So this is the ICTC project, and so I'm kind of not going into too much detail in terms of each project because later on I'm going to offer or present and share the information to go directly to the delivery partner. They are really the experts in terms of their project and their focus. In order to develop the specific SWILP projects or agreements with sectoral delivery partners, they had to show us exactly what the need was in the sector. So if they, for instance, decided to focus on, for this one, business technology management, then it's because they've showed us through clear empirical evidence and qualitative evidence that there was a need for that in the sector from employers and from students and other programs. So I'm going to, following these details, offer you the possibility to connect directly with the sectoral partners so that you can find out which one would be a good fit for your institution or your program, and maybe provide additional links and additional ideas in terms of the sector reach. Canadian Council for Aviation, similar scenario, close to 1,000 placements over the 4 years. They are working more at the college level, and they have kind of combined, and this is sort of an innovative right off the bat, because they sort of combined various programs into one. Some of these programs had kind of core curriculum that was repeated in each of the 2 or 3 various programs, and they've kind of combined everything so that the student sees the core curriculum and also accesses the more practical and technical knowledge for 3 programs into one. And then they've also changed the schedule in terms of having the semesters, longer semesters that allow better flow for employers wanting to hire the students and getting a maximum benefit out of their presence in the workplace, and letting the students gain maximum benefit there as well. I think they are going for placements that are between 6 months and 12 months, just to make sure that everyone that is in the work placement has enough time to actually really learn and become productive and really absorb all of the content that they need to. The Eco Canada programs or project is also very interesting, very innovative. All of them target some proportion of underrepresented students. It was kind of difficult, and we know that you guys might have information that we don't have on this side, but we can only access students that are currently in programs, and we didn't have 100% clear data on how many students, underrepresented students, are actually accessing co-op students or co-op programs or work integrated learning programs across the country. So, but we made sure that all of the agreement holders really focus on trying to match underrep students with employers and offer them maximum chances to partake and participate. Biotalent, and this was the announcement that was made in the SAP. And similar kind of, we didn't want to, wanted to share and try to distribute the placements across sectors sort of evenly. So most of our agreements for now have around 1,000 placements. Again, we recognize that number might not be sufficient to answer all of the demand out there, but we really see this as a catalyst and as a step in the right direction in terms of influencing employers to see the benefits and want to participate more. This slide is about some of the direct information that you can access on our website, both in French and in English. Our ESDC website, that first link up there, the Government of Canada website, actually has all of the delivery partners' information on there, the direct links to the delivery partner, and they will be the point of contact, really, for students, employers, and PSC institutions wishing to participate in the SWILP program. So all of this information is available on our website, but it's also available directly through this webinar presentation. So if you want to get in contact with our delivery partners directly, that's what I would really suggest. If you have higher order or more general questions about the program in general, then that can be addressed either directly to us through our website or through maybe through the CAFCE. We also have some social media. We're kind of catching up with the times at the federal government level. These are a few videos, either testimonials from students who are participating in SWILP placements, and or employers, managers that are hiring students, as well as a general video about the program and kind of explaining the functionality of it. So if you want to check those out, we kind of tried to get them running through the webinar, but it's not the easiest thing to coordinate. So I think you can access them more easily from your own workstation. And I have one or other point. I was getting questions from some members, some PSC institutions, concerning the eligibility criteria for SWILP students. So I brought my notes because it's a question that comes up, and we really tried to make things as uniform as possible. So we followed the very similar eligibility criteria as other federal government programs for youth or students. Although we don't have, as the youth employment strategy, for instance, would have an age eligibility criteria, we don't have any age eligibility criteria. Students of any age that are registered in a PSC program can apply to be a SWILP placement participant if they have this in their curricula or in their program, recognized PSC program. In terms of being Canadian students, we get this question a lot, and we would say that they would have to be either a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, or have refugee status. It's not enough to be an international student and to have a work visa in Canada to be able to participate in at least this edition of the SWILP program. Students actually have to have one of the three status options, so Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or refugee status, to be able to participate in SWILP, and for the employer to be able to receive the wage subsidy directly. So that's one question addressed. I think there was another question about the timing or the length, number of hours, number of weeks for each placement. I have to admit that we really did base ourselves, when we were thinking about the program of the design, we based ourselves on a standard co-op placement, which we felt was around 16 weeks, and so we kind of determined an average salary for those weeks and used that as our basis, kind of reference point. However, as I mentioned in the beginning, we do want to keep things as moldable as possible, and so we do not have a fixed time limit, number of hours, number of days, number of weeks for work placement. It is totally up to the PSC institution and the employer and the sectoral initiative or the sectoral partner to come up with something that is that works for everyone. So we will not be eliminating or establishing a clear eligibility criteria based on the number of days or hours or weeks that a student is in the placement. I think those are the top of mind questions, but Anne, if you have any other questions that you want to throw our way, please feel free.
Just had to unmute myself there. So yes, absolutely. We've got some great questions coming in. Okay, where to begin? So I think one of the questions that had come in earlier related to the role that post-secondary institutions play in approving or vetting that a student is actually engaged in a qualified work-integrated learning program. At this point in time, can you clarify the pieces of information that schools would be required to provide to industry associations in order to confirm a student's status?
Okay, that's a good question. Once again, I think we are really, really confident that our delivery partners in the sectors can best determine exactly what level of information is required. We, the federal government, are not collecting personal level data for this program. However, we are handing down the responsibility to definitely vet the eligibility for the students. So that means that at some point the sector delivery partner will probably be asking the PSC institution to vet that the student is actually a registered student in a recognized PSC program, and that within this program there is a requirement concerning a work-integrated learning opportunity, and that is a program requirement, and so that the sector organization, delivery partner, can receive this information from the PSC institution and then transfer that to us to just confirm that they are eligible for the program.
Okay, great. And questions are coming in left, right, and center, so I'm going to turn to them. So one of the questions that we received is with respect to the Stream 1 funding and the question of new placements. So can you define what a new placement is?
Yes, good question. So we want this program, each dollar of this program, to be going to creating net new placements. We don't want to fund something that was going to happen without us anyways, or fund something that didn't require new program funds to make happen. So we definitely asked the delivery partners to establish a baseline work-integrated learning opportunity within employers that will be participating to this program in this program. So to be eligible to receive wage subsidies, an employer must demonstrate that they are taking on at least one or more new or additional students compared to the baseline, which would have been, year zero or like whenever they decided to take on a student or register to access SWILP wage subsidies, they would need to go back during the previous year, semester, or depending on the situation, showing how many students they had at that time, and then showing the incremental number of workplace students or offers or placements to be eligible. And they would only be eligible for the incremental placements, not the overall set of placements, even though they are applying for SWILP funding.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. I'm also getting some questions related to timelines for expansion, and some of them are specific to industry associations and some of them are specific to regions. And we do have a series of webinars, so we are expecting to have most of the industry associations present on their own projects. I'm wondering if you have a sense of timelines for expansion at this point in time, or if those questions should be better directed to the different industry associations.
Good question. So I don't, if it was just on a personal level, I'd say, can we just get through this September month and then think of expansion? But no, seriously, I do hope, and I am so encouraged to see the positive response for this program. We have been working with colleagues and stakeholders and partners all over Canada over the last almost 3 years now to get their input in designing a program that would be useful and beneficial and that would actually work on the ground for everyone. So we are happy with the response. There is, for now, and I should let Benoit answer this question, but I think for now we have the $73 million, and we will try to get all the projects running. We are happy with the 5 projects in place so far, and we look forward to considering all options of expansion for the program, depending on the demand and on the response that we get from PSC partners.
Yeah, and I guess it's Ben here as well. Just to add to this, I guess the question could be understood at 2 levels. There's expansion of the program per se, which Sarah touched upon, but there's also the expansion of each individual projects.
Right.
Having more PSC institutions involved in each of them. As Sarah stated, there's now, as she mentioned, 5 projects, 5 sectors. There's 1 or 2 that will be announced shortly, and potentially more in terms of expanding the program. But for the projects, I know that each of our partners are expanding the number of partners themselves, like PSC institutions and employers that are participating within their own projects. And I think it's going to be beneficial for you to hear from them directly in terms of where they're at and expanding all of this. Of course, they are mandated by us to create as big of a call to action as possible within their own sectors to create more real opportunities for more students. So there's still expansion is everywhere, I guess, and stay tuned for the conversations with each of the industry associations.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. I do think these particular questions were aimed at sort of expanding of existing projects. So we will definitely raise those questions in subsequent webinars. I'm also getting a series of questions related to provincial tax credits. So here in Ontario, we have a co-op tax credit. In BC, there is a tech credit, BCIC co-op grant. And the questions are, can these wage subsidies be combined with additional tax credits?
So those are good questions for tax people. I believe so. So our understanding is that an employer could still receive a wage subsidy and receive a tax credit, although you will understand that it's really not our area of expertise, especially not provincial tax policies. So that question is probably better asked at your provincial level.
That's great. Thank you. And I should mention to those of you whose questions I am attempting to field, if I'm not doing it justice, or if you have a follow-up question, please just pop it in the queue. So questions of timing. How far in advance can employers apply for SWILP? So if somebody was looking for a summer 2018 placement, could they start working on securing that now, or is there a specific time frame, or is that industry association specific?
Not sure I can answer that. That would really be a delivery partner question directly.
Yeah.
However, the only sort of anecdotal information I might have on that is that some of our delivery partners have indicated that since the big announcement week was so public and so far-reaching, they have been getting a lot of interest from employers, and so I think as early as possible would be my recommendation or my advice for employers to touch base with delivery partners.
Great, thank you. The next question that I have is a little bit of a cart and horse question. So does an employer need to get approval first from an industry association and then proceed to hiring, or can they hire the student and then connect with the industry association? Is there a preferred process?
That's tricky. I think the preferred process would be to connect with the sort of apply for SWILP funding via the delivery partner first. However, in the first few months of operation, I've seen a little bit of both. But really, again, sorry to say this and be repeating myself, but it's really at the level of the delivery partner.
Yeah.
But one thing to keep in mind is something Sarah mentioned during the presentation is the fact that we are interested only in incremental opportunities. So it's not like we don't feel that there's a public good argument for subsidizing a placement that would have happened even without the subsidy. So that would point in the direction of connecting with the association first, and if there is a possibility for a wage subsidy, then the particular employer would indeed create a placement opportunity. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. The next question relates back to criteria for SWILP, and it's, I think, for you, Sarah, but either one of you can jump in. With respect to qualifying as a work-integrated learning opportunity, so those of us that spend our days particularly in the co-op field believe in the necessity of integrating the experiences with the academic curriculum, and in particular in co-op, that a student returns to an academic program after their work-integrated learning experience. So the question is, can you confirm if students must be returning to school in the same program following the WIL experience?
Okay, sorry, and this is a question that comes up quite often or regularly. Our criteria is that the student must be a registered student with a recognized PSC institution, and the WIL opportunity must be part of their program, recognized program, in the fields of STEM or business, and whether the placement happens in their first semester, or if it happens in the last semester, we are not basing eligibility, SWILP eligibility, on that factor.
Okay, great. You guys are doing a fantastic job, by the way, as this list of questions continues to fill up. So I'm just reading through them really quickly, and there are a couple of questions about the STEM criteria. So one of the questions is, do you have to be a STEM student, or is it enough to be a student at post-secondary working in a STEM position? So for example, could an arts student working in an information technology position qualify for this funding?
A little tricky to answer, but I think that our policy authorities specify that the students need to be in STEM or business-related programs.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Let's see here. So, are there any objectives related to geographic distribution of funds, so provincial or regional allocation?
Okay, another good question. We did not want to allocate specifically to regions. We felt that the $73 million would be more efficiently dispersed or more efficiently spent and create the momentum and the systemic change that we were aiming to create if we targeted specific sectors or subsectors of the Canadian economy that are just really in need of a bit of a boost in terms of labor force and skills development. So we chose to go through the sectoral route also because we think that although our $73 million might not be enough to offer wage subsidies to all employers across the country, if we create the momentum in a sector and have a delivery partner at the hub of this sector that can spread the benefits across a whole sector and transform it and link employers from that sector to the PSC institutions within it or that connect with it, to create better curriculum or to just have better channels to connect on work placements, we felt as though the benefits would be greater than the sum of the wage subsidy in essence. So we are cognizant of the fact that some industries and some students or some PSC institutions that are a little bit further out maybe and that don't have as much STEM-related sectors of activities in their region might not see as much action, but the program per se is really eligible for all PSC institutions and all students across Canada, all employers that have to do with STEM and business, and we think that reaches pretty far across the country.
Let me add to this a little bit, is that at the federal level, we really wanted to go at it from a pan-Canadian sectoral approach. So therefore, hence why choosing national organization as delivery partner in order to get the most reach in each regions of the country. And it's early days. I know that the projects are not necessarily reaching all PSC institutions in all regions of the country, but it's been clearly mandated to them that what we want them to do is to have a pan-Canadian approach to all of this, and that's what's unfolding right now.
Great, thank you. I don't know if this is one of the questions that falls in the we need further clarity, and we'll need to loop back to the membership, but we're getting quite a few questions about whether or not university and colleges are eligible for funding as employers, particularly with respect to academic research positions, which fall in line with a lot of the innovation and STEM positions that some of our students might participate in.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's not necessarily the intent of the program, I'll say. The government also announced another tranche of funding in the budget 2017 to an organization called ITAC, and that funding is a little bit more in line with what you're describing, which is research internships, if you will. Within PSC institution most of the time. There's also some funding through NSERC that the federal government provides. So our program is a little bit more traditionally around the will placement, I'll say even co-op placements within industry.
Okay. And what about other federal government organizations? So the question is students that say D&D or something like that.
No, the federal government would not subsidize itself.
Okay.
So we are currently working on a call for action for the federal government itself, but it would obviously not have a wage subsidy component.
Right. So a couple of questions. I sense these are probably industry-specific questions, but timelines. So how long should an employer expect to wait for approvals?
That's beyond the scope, I think, of our reach for now. Hopefully our delivery partners are on the ball and really efficient at providing employers with some feedback. But
it should not be that long, and I agree with Sarah. It's our job is done. Like they have the funding in their hands, but we have some pretty strict and robust requirements that they need to follow, and that involves delivering on quite a bit of will placements each year. So they are taking that seriously, and it should unfold pretty quickly.
Great, thank you. I'm just working through these, attempting to multitask. So some questions that I think are pretty straightforward. Are post-secondary institutions expected to pay anything to participate in the program?
I think that's a clear no.
Good. Okay.
However, maybe
yes.
I could just kind of side note this by saying that because of the partnership stream of activity in the program, we do really hope that PSC institutions come to the table with employers and provide some of their time and sort of in-kind resources to create more of a conversation with employers and a long sustainable partnership.
Great. And I think both of these you mentioned at a high level, but I'll bring them forward just for clarity. So one of the questions is, how does the employer access the funds? Do they have to be a member of an industry association or organization?
No, we nothing in the program stipulates that they need to be a member. The delivery partner will be mandated or just responsible for flowing the funds through to the employer. The employer will beforehand have proof that they are or have paid or are paying wages to a student that is eligible and recognized as a SWILP participant.
Great.
Actually,
and
just to clarify that, because I find it's a great question. We're talking in generic terms about our partners, calling them industry associations. In the pure sense of the term, there's only one of the five that is a true industry association, which is ITAC, the IT Association of Canada. The other four are not necessarily membership-based industry associations, so they're not necessarily operating on a membership-based basis. So I think it's important to clarify that.
yes, thank you. That's really helpful. Okay, they are still flying in fast and furious, so bear with me as I try to pull them together into threads. Okay, so a couple of questions that had come in earlier that are popping back up. There's a bit of confusion about the kinds of business studies that would be supported. Can you provide any more clarity on the business programs that qualify under SWILP? A sense of, I know that we all have different names and it's such a broad spectrum here in the country, but I think that part is a little more ambiguous, and just wondering if you have any additional clarifying comments.
Yeah, I think some of our future announcements might create some clarification in terms of where we are investing our dollars.
Okay.
But think about it from a broad definition, broad sense, and think about the announcement that the government chose to make, like deliberately choosing STEM and business sectors was directly in line with the push towards the federal innovation agenda. So therefore, I would argue that potentially all types of business schools, faculty would qualify.
Yeah, and we didn't restrict on the STEM either. I think STEM also has all these different branches, and we are cognizant of that. And as you mentioned, Anne, terminology is very various from one program to another, or from one institution to another. I think one of the main focus thoughts behind including the business programs was how the federal government thinks that entrepreneurship should be more of an option for students in terms of their career path, and in seeing how global economy now really requires students and workers to know not only about the product and how to make it, but also maybe how to sales pitch it and how to market it and how to establish good value for the product. And so those two worlds are colliding a lot more and more, and it's in that sort of spirit that I think we decided to include the business aspect.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. So I'm going to try and get through as many of these last questions as possible, and then I apologize to everyone. There's still about 14 questions in the queue, so we will put them together and send them along and try and get some answers and share them with you once we've got more clarity. One that is listed here that came up earlier is with respect to Magnet. Can you give us an update on the role of Magnet in the program, and is it an expectation that all of the partners would use Magnet?
So what we know, no, there's no expectation for anything. What we have heard is that some of our delivery partners have been in communication with Magnet and others, because the industry associations or the employer consortia delivery partner wants to reach as many students as possible, or as many PSC institutions as possible, and in that regard facilitate the link between students or PSC institutions and employers so that the work placements can happen more easily. Some of the delivery partners see the value in partnering with groups like the Magnet Group, and we encourage all of these connections. We're not supporting one versus another. We're just really happy and encouraging all of these different networks and links to be happening together.
Thank you. There were a couple of questions from schools with respect to sort of initial partners, initial PSE partners, and wondering how they would go about sort of raising the profile of their program with different industry associations, be it for wage subsidies or for those partnership streams. And the question is really, for most of them, is it just a matter of contacting those industry associations and moving things forward from there?
Yes, that would be the way to do it, for sure.
Great, thank you. And we've got a bit of a logistics question here, one that I know has come up with a few of the partners here. So a first-year student. There are some questions about whether or not it's a first-year student in terms of their academic program or a first work-term student, which in some programs doesn't happen until second year or later.
Okay, so this is something that came up. It's a program design feature that we added on demand from student associations and PSC institution organizations or groups of them. They were recognizing the fact that not all employers, it might be more difficult to convince an employer to take on a student from a first year in their program versus a student that's in their fourth year. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. And so we included that. But if for a particular or a given program there's no work placement in that first year, then maybe that just doesn't apply to that program specifically. Mm-hmm. It's just something that we included to ensure that all students that need to access a work placement can do so more easily. So it would be a first-year student and not a first placement student, just to clarify.
Right. And maybe while we're splitting hairs, if we're talking about the summer after first year?
First year, so year 12 months.
For 12 months, okay. Great. Okay, I've got my eye on the time, and I won't keep you. I'm seeing a couple other questions that are sort of related to net new and how we determine if a job is net new. And the question is, will each partner organization define their own process for determining whether a co-op job is net new? And the question that is associated with that is a note that, of course, many companies recruit from multiple post-secondary institutions. And so would the net new positions be the sum of those placements in 1 year from all post-secondary institutions plus one?
Yep. So sum of plus one.
Okay, great. And I have just one last one that I will pass your way because it's a follow-up on the business question, and I think it's sort of seeking clarity. This is a very specific example, so I'll pass it along. Give me your thoughts on it, and perhaps we can share it with different industry associations as we move to those specific webinars. So the question is that with respect to a business student, if a business student was working in a STEM organization in a business role, would that qualify? So the example is a financial analyst with IBM.
Sure, I would say yes.
It's even double points.
Yeah.
Double points.
Not double Winchester.
Right. Clearly noted. Okay, well, thank you so much, Sarah and Benoit, for answering these questions. I still do have 11 unanswered questions sitting in the queue here. I apologize to those of you on the line. We weren't able to get to all of them, but I will put them together and pass them along to Sarah and Benoit, and we'll share answers back with you. And if you do have other questions that you didn't get a chance to raise, please send them along to CAFCE@CAFCE.ca. Don't forget that we do have the different employer consortia webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks. So you might be able to get clarity on specific processes, timelines for partnerships, the types of roles that qualify through those webinars as well. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. And again, a special thank you to Sarah and Benoit for taking some of your time to help us understand this fantastic new program. We are so delighted to be able to support it in any way, shape, or form, and we look forward to doing great things together in the next 4 and hopefully more years.
Likewise, thank you so much.